Awkward Insurance. This week, we are heading to the 2024 Insurtech Insights USA Conference to listen to interviews we recorded on the blue carpet of the event. In addition to this episode, head over to the YouTube channel for the Risk and Insurance Education Alliance for exclusive video interviews captured at Insurtech Insights with Emma Roloff, Jennifer Queen, and Alexis Sierra Vaughn. And just in case you missed it, you may be wondering, who the heck is the Risk and Insurance Education Alliance? Well, the National Alliance for Insurance Education and Research has refreshed our brand like a shiny new penny. So update your saved links to www.riskeducation.org and jump on a new designation journey today. All right, back to the show. One of the main focuses we had this year was concerned with the disconnect between the technology side of things, speaking the language of the insurance side of things. And I'm not sure if you've ever tried to speak a new language, but there's more to it than just learning the words. We also touch on the role third-party vendors play in InsurTech and how they can be more effective. So stay tuned to the end where we explore the education side of the industry and speak to a university who decided that it was worth having a booth at an InsurTech event. Now, let's dive in, starting with the CEO of the event itself, Christopher Lundberg, followed by one of our favorite friends of the podcast, the ever awkward and insightful Jacob Galecki, and ending with Fora co-founder and CEO, Valkyrie Holmes. Awkward Insurance is back at Insurtech Insights USA 2024. I'm really excited about the person sitting in front of me. Who do I have with me right now?
So my name is Christopher. I'm the CEO of Insurtech Insights. So I'm happy to have you here.
I'm very excited to be here. Yeah. Thanks so much for creating time for us to have space. So I want to tell you a little bit about some of the conversations that we've had. To give you a little bit of information about me, I'm from the independent agent side for the last almost 20 years. Insurance technology is something that is desperately needed within the independent agent channel, but it's something that we're really scared to adopt. And a lot of that has to do with a communication gap between the languages that tech community speaks and the insurance community speaks. Events like this are ones that can help bridge that gap. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I completely agree with you. It's why we started this conference. Exactly the pain point that you're addressing there, which is, I think I would summarize it in building trust. And I think what we're achieving with the conference is having face-to-face conversations between individuals, which are creating a two-way stream of communication, which is building more trust between the industry and technology providers, which is what you don't normally get by more online media. So by being in person, being together, putting people on stage together, facilitating these conversations where we're allowing the audience to address the key questions and like, why are there some uncertainty? And so I get to, as an organizer, I get to speak with both the insurance, the industry side, but also on the technology side. And I do still see there is differences in what they see as the challenges. And so that's our role as an organizer, is to address what you just said there, is building more trust between technology providers and the insurance industry.
Right. So there's several insurance technology conferences that are out there. What are some ways, or what are some thoughts on getting the independent agent community or the insurance and risk management community to attend more of these conferences so that we can start having these conversations with the technologists that are building the technology for us and make sure that it's meeting our needs faster? And especially since you brought up trust, getting to that trust factor faster. Yeah,
so I think it starts by talking with and identifying the success stories. So one thing that I spend a lot of time on is when I speak with different insurtechs that are coming up, I say, let's talk about successful partnerships that you've had with the industry, and actually introduce me. And then I'll have that conversation with the insurer, and then bring and facilitate and bring that on stage, which will then attract more of the industry to come. I think if you just simply put the technology on stage, people are not going to listen, people are not going to show up for it. People want to see their peers there. They want to see success stories. They want to see real solutions. It's a common theme, which I also addressed it in my opening keynote, which was around we need to stay grounded in what are the actual problems and not just talk about the solutions. Yep. And we need to make sure that we don't get lost in the conversation about AI, but focus on, well, what are these core issues in insurance that we've had for many years, which are around distribution, the underwriting, claims, and so on. and making sure that we start the conversation there and then say, well, how can then technology solve that? So I think it's a bit about, as I said in the beginning, what type of people we bring on stage. A lot of it is also around, as I said, what topics do we decide to feature? Are the topics starting with technology first, or are the topics starting with the actual day-to-day problems? And I think you need to start with the day-to-day problems, and you then need to say, okay, well, how is then technology solving that? So it is different ways, but I think having the right people on stage combined with the right topics is how you will bring more of the industry in the room. So that's our strategy is from Insurtech Insights side.
So how long have you been doing Insurtech Insights? You specifically?
Yeah, so I started it back in 2018 when we did a small initial event in London. So I've been running it for what is it now? It's actually 6 years coming into that. So it's been a
How
lot of
big
fun.
was that first event?
The first one was, we were 1,200 people registered. So in 2018, I think we came into the market at the right time there, and a lot of people were really hungry for learning more about Insurtech as an idea, as a concept. But obviously we've grown a lot since then, and it's been a fun journey.
So since 2018, and now this event has grown to how large?
So we're 5,000 registered for this event. So it's our largest here in the US.
You've met a lot of people.
Yes.
Both overseas and here in the States. Do you want to share one awkward exchange that you've had? There has to be something.
An awkward exchange.
Meeting people gets awkward.
Yes. I'm not from insurance. I wasn't from the industry. And so when you initially come in, you can be very overwhelmed by the industry and our understanding of it. I think my strategy mainly is just bringing it back to solving what are the actual problems here. I think my awkward exchanges is, I'll give one example. Usually it's because I end up starting to dig very deep into trying to really understand what are they actually doing. So I'm not going to name the company, of course, but it was the one company where they were saying, well, we're AI in insurance, and I was like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? We're providing generative AI for the claim side. I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean with the claim side? And they said we're helping making sure that the adjusters do the right work. I was like, okay, all right. So what exactly are you doing for the adjusters here? Okay. This was a long time ago, but I just remember that interaction because it was one of those where I just have to keep asking to try and really get at it. This was a salesperson. I think he was very new in working with this in Insurtech. But I think, and it's what I try to tell a lot of these Insurtechs, is that can you please just tell me fundamentally what is the change that you're making for somebody, and what are you doing? Because it very often we can get lost in just talking about buzzwords, and I absolutely hate that.
Talking somebody in circles is definitely awkward.
Yeah.
And I really wanted an awkward story, but that honestly just takes it right back to what we started talking about in that communication piece. And there's a lot of that here.
Yes.
I'll walk up and or somebody will come over and they want to talk about what is education and insurance.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
And they stay really high level. There's a sales pitch in there.
Yeah.
And then by the time I'm ready to walk away from the conversation, they finally get to that knowledge part of it. And I'm like, why didn't we just start there to begin with?
Yeah, I think it's, we want to build more curiosity, and we want to make people comfortable saying that they don't know and they don't have the answer. I think that's one thing that we want to see more on stage, is more honesty and more genuine curiosity. There's a lot of confidence, and so we try to make our best as organizers to try to prep speakers and put them in a safe environment where they can open more up about their challenges.
Thank you so much for sitting in the awkward space at Insurtech Insights USA 2024. I really appreciate you being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Who do I have with me right now?
Jacob Galecki, Galecki Search Associates, and third-time guest of the Awkward Insurance Podcast.
I was going to say, he's back. I think we have an awkward groupie. Are you a groupie?
Potentially.
You are awkward, for sure. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for sitting down with us today. This year at Insurtech Insights, we're really looking to capture a conversation around the missing dialogue between the risk and insurance industry and Insurtech. And that's a whole lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the talent recruitment side.
Correct.
So when I just said that, what's the first thing that pops into your head? The missing dialogue between the risk and insurance industry and Insurtech?
Well, the missing dialogue. I think that, well, a couple things come to mind. First, I think that a lot of insurance technology is developed in a vacuum without the insight and advice from the actual insurance industry. So these, in many cases, are developed by insurance outsiders, and that there is. So when you say there's a missing dialogue, there is no dialogue.
That's right. I mean, that's so from my experience, my experience is on the independent agent side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly the point. There is no dialogue. Only if there was a dialogue, it starts with mistrust and not really sure how to take the first step into tech. And I don't know about you. You might go into a relationship with something or someone expecting trust, but once it's lost, it's really hard to gain back, even if it's a different person or technology that comes through the next time. So from the talent recruitment piece of it, when you're working with professionals or a client, what is it you're looking for in terms of Insurtech or technologists? Let's drop the Insurtech because I've been scolded about that recently.
It's a loaded term. It's a loaded term. So what, we've been actually internally at Galecki Search Associates really grappling what does Insurtech really mean in 2024? And it's really just become, actually, we were at a conference in Boston and they asked the questions of what does this word mean to you? And it really came down to it's a lifestyle, which is kind of like, okay, well, got it. But, Insurtech's been around forever. There's examples of insurance companies adopting large mainframe computers back in the 60s and 70s. There's like armies of people loading punch cards. Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
Yeah, punch cards into these big machines, and they would read and do all kinds of, actuarial calculations, underwriting analysis, and all kinds of stuff. And so technology is not something that's new to the insurance industry. And certainly there's been a number of companies, even as we've moved into the 80s and to the 90s, IBM, PwC, all the different iterations of Willis Towers Watson, which I believe began with Tillinghast, and then through about 85 mergers and acquisitions, they are now Willis Towers Watson. They've been providing software to the insurance industry for quite some time. And what's interesting is that these were always insurance people creating technology for insurance people. And today we find ourselves with not insurance people creating technology for insurance people, ?
Why is that a problem?
Do they know what they're doing?
Right? Okay. So do they? Have you seen that? I mean, you came to the conference last year. Mm-hmm. You're here this year. Mm-hmm. You kind of keep this high-level bird's eye view. Yeah. Do you think it's connecting?
Not always, but in many cases, yes. It's obviously working. I mean, there's I think a pretty robust ecosystem that's developed in this space. We've seen it grow over the last 10 years to being really big environment, big ecosystem.
The Insurtech space you're talking about.
So like Insurtech Connect in Las Vegas went from like, I think 1,000 people, and last year was like 12,000, 13,000 people was there. And so, we're at this inflection point where, well, a lot of insurance companies work their way through a lot of these digital transformations, right? Have, shed off the old punch cards and mainframe computers and have brought in new tech. And there's been quite a lot of companies that have popped up to solve different problems in the value stream of insurance, be that quoting, be that pricing, be that forms filings and rate filings and all kinds of stuff. And so there's, I think, a whole host of products out there that are super duper helpful for insurance companies that are developed by insurance people. But then now I think we're entering into this like next phase where AI is becoming very buzzy. And so what does that mean for the insurance industry, and how are companies going to be developing AI technology that will be useful to us here at insurance? And I remain skeptical that AI is anything other than a cool toy right now. It's been, something like ChatGPT has been described to me as the smartest 5-year-old you'll ever meet. And so it's like, I scratch my head and I'm like, what are the use cases of this new technology, and how will it be utilized? Certainly I could think of some things that it can be used for even in its current state, but is it there yet? I don't know.
Absolutely not. So when you're thinking about finding the right people to connect with your clients, the developers, if you will, whoever it is, who are you looking for in this space? Give me an idea real
the
quick.
thing is that like, for like an engineer who's going to be developing software for an insurance company, that's a broad-based skill set, right? And, that can apply to any industry under the sun. And so is like specific insurance expertise important? Not necessarily, not on the engineering side, but then you have deep insurance subject matter experts, and then you have somebody who sits in the middle, right? And so that's typically a product manager, a technical product manager. And in these cases, the technical product manager really does need to be someone who is conversant in the
Why is that important, though?
Why is it important? Because
Right.
they're the
because
you're just
why?
you're just not going to find. So it's just not a practical exercise to be like, I need to find a software developer that has had 30 years of insurance experience. And likely, I'm going to be honest, someone who's a software developer who has 30 years of insurance experience isn't going to be up to date on the most recent languages, the most recent tech, and what's going on in the broader industry. So I think there's a great opportunity for insurance to bring in a lot of interesting technology, some thoughts by bringing over.
Okay, but I have a
engineering
question.
talent.
When you think of somebody that has 30 years of insurance experience, and then you have a developer that has their history of experience in technology, have you ever sat down and tried to speak somebody else's language, having never spoken it before? So an insurance person sitting down, like, this is 3 years coming for me in terms of technology. Somebody says, what are the use cases for this? And my brain will sit there and go, well, let's think of the basics. Like, there's not a lot of creativity when it comes because my brain is processing the basic language of technology. So where's that happy middleman where you've got the insurance person with 30 years of experience, the technology developer with all of their experience, and how do they find a interpreter?
Yeah, well, I
help
mean,
the
I think
creativity?
that the product manager is that interpreter. I think that they're the ones who are bilingual, if you will. So they're going to both understand insurance and the insurance use case, and they're going to understand technology, and then they can make that translation to the technologist, and then can make that translation back to insurance. Because here's the interesting thing about coding software is that something that may seem very simple to us, be like, oh, can't you just like put this little box here or instead of here?
Easy peasy.
Yeah, and it's not. It's like, oh, that'll just take us 3 years of work and and have to redo our entire underlying architecture, blah, blah, blah. I don't understand any of that. But, apparently not everything is as easy as it seems when developing technology. And so you do need that product manager who understands, like, no, that's not possible, but we can do this. Here's the workaround for that. And then we could still bring the solution to the use case that we're trying to solve for here.
Yeah. So the interpreter. Do you look for the interpreter?
Yes.
Yes. What do you look for in the interpreter?
Well, they would have to have been successful in bringing about technical insurance products. And so we have to make a clear distinction when we're talking about quote unquote insurance products, because when I hear insurance product, I think a BOP form or HO3. These are insurance products, right? But the actual insurance that we're selling. But what I'm talking about here are technical products, and so that could be agency software or pricing software for actuaries, etc. So someone who's been successful in doing that, and likely has been somebody who grew up in insurance in some aspect. So either like grew up in claims, grew up in underwriting, grew up in actuarial, and in those three areas there, I see from the home office perspective of being kind of like, those are the people who are like of insurance and will always be of insurance. But many of them move into these technical product management roles and can understand it deeply.
Final thoughts on bridging this gap of communication between insurance and technology?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing, there's I just mentioned that Insurtech is a loaded term, right? There's a lot of different companies that fall under the banner of Insurtech, types of companies, right? We have these MGAs that are, they're producing insurance products and distributing insurance products, right, into the world. And they are doing that through some kind of tech solution that they have grown in-house. So in those cases, having deep insurance subject matter experts are very, very important because you are an MGA, and there's going to be both carriers and reinsurers that are going to be breathing down your neck to be creating good financial results. And so they care less about the technology and more about the insurance fundamentals, and that's important to remember. And then you have all of these tech providers that are providing some kind of solution to insurance companies, be it to the MGAs, be it to carriers, be it to reinsurers, or to the end consumer. They also really need to be mindful to bring in the appropriate subject matter experts from the industry. This is not an easy industry. It's very, very complex and highly regulated, and it takes years and years and years. I've been in it for 25 years now. I've only just started to understand maybe 5% of this world.
And we only use 20% of our brains.
Yeah. So
that's where AI comes in. It's going to help us use more than 20% of our brains, right?
Yeah. So once we plug it into our chip in our brain, then we'll be good. So
is that the future? A chip in our brain?
I think for some, it will not be for me.
Me either. Jacob, thanks so much for sitting in the awkward space at Insurtech Insights USA this year. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Who do I have with me right now?
My name is Valkyrie Holmes. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Fora.
Fora. Tell me about Fora.
Yeah, so with Fora, we create loss control solutions for a disaster-prone business. So we're essentially assessing the risk of properties, not just which properties are going to be hit by a natural disaster, but how likely they are to survive. So in the industry, there's a lot of data that either you get from inspections or satellite or aerial that kind of just sits in a folder somewhere. But in order to get the accurate standardization of those materials, we have to put something actionable on that. So we deliver resilience scores to people all across the country. We've done thousands of assessments in, everywhere. And then, we're just moving on.
So I got on your website before talking to you, which I'm so excited that you're sitting here. And Megan says you're a wonderful person to talk to, too. I got on your website and I noticed a couple of things. And both my producer and I were like, that's pretty bold.
Yeah.
So there's just a couple of things. One of them said, we know which homes are going to be hit by a natural disaster.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, the insurance industry has kind of been making that claim for decades. And that's the thing. We have been pricing on all of these high-risk locations in the form of zone, right? So when we use climate modeling, when we use all these different attributes, we're pricing a specific area, extreme risk, low risk, on how likely a disaster is to occur. And that's the thing. With insurance companies, the industry is essentially saying, okay, based off of these zones, the assumptions we're making decisions on pricing based on which homes we think are going to be hit by a natural disaster. And a lot of the classic modeling are telling you, we think these are going to be what's going to happen based on pure weather data. But in reality, we know which homes are going to be hit by a natural disaster based on how likely they are to be resilient against that disaster. So it's essentially, how are we predicting whether this is going to be a partial versus total loss? It's about how likely this property is to survive if a natural disaster is to occur in an area.
Okay. So I also wrote down something that you provided, natural disaster resilience, which to me just says natural disasters are here to stay.
Yeah.
And they're going to get bigger and better every time, because that's what resiliency is, right? We keep coming back for more and we get better at it each time. What does that mean to you, natural disaster resilience?
Yeah, so when we think about the homes of today, they're not built for the disasters of tomorrow. With climate change, with all these different risk factors, disasters are just going to get worse, like you said. And so when I think about resilience, it's making sure that our properties can withstand the disasters as they continue to get worse. So when we think about the kinds of materials that properties are built on, the kind of construction, like in wildfire zones, the fact that there's a ton of vegetation around these like very simple areas of the property that are most impacted, these are our most valuable assets, and we need to be able to protect them. And so what Fora does is essentially assess how resilient that property is, how likely that property is to survive, and give you the tools to reduce your risk on those properties.
What types of tools are you giving me? Because once my home is built, I don't think I want to do anything else to it.
Yeah, so we do a couple different things, both for new business, for newly constructed properties, and then for existing properties. So essentially what happens is when you apply for an insurance policy, you get a text from your insurance company that says, hey, we need a little bit more information. You're in a high-risk area. From there, you do a quick 5 to 10 minute assessment, just like a walkthrough of your property. So we're identifying all of the key risk factors that we have basically the opportunity to upgrade. And then from there, it's action items that range from as simple as, hey, prune these bushes so they're not overhanging your roof so embers don't trickle down and ruin your most valuable asset.
Okay.
It's things that range in price, that range in effort, from replacing the siding of your home, doing like random different like landscaping things, increasing the resistance of your roof to embers by like sealing specific vents, ember resistant vents. Like, I could probably go on about all the different attributes that we're collecting. It's over 100 different like particles that we're creating, but all of these different action items play into the resilience of the property, and that's kind of how we're assessing how likely that property is to survive.
So to me, this says third-party risk management, because as an independent agent, these should be all the things that I'm knowledgeable on and coaching my client on. Yeah. So is this taking the independent agent out of that equation? Is that necessary?
Yeah, no. We actually work with quite a few agencies on almost like a data collection aspect, where we're providing that resource, we're providing that education, but from a localized perspective, we don't know which properties are going to be, we don't know which people are going to go for specific action items, how that fits into their overarching policy. We're ultimately not finding insurance products for people. We're helping people get the data to become insurable in a lot of these areas that would have been uninsurable. So it's kind of just more increasing the speed and accuracy that agents can bring to their clients while helping the policyholder have a better experience and learn more about their property where agents might be a little less knowledgeable.
Interesting. Valkyrie, thanks so much for sitting in the awkward space with me at Insurtech Insights 2024. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thanks. Jacob had some really interesting insights on having a middleman or an interpreter of sorts between tech and insurance, and I wholly agree. I am excited that he's the one that gets to find that middleman to bridge the gap in communication. One thing I was really looking for out of Insurtech Insights CEO Chris Lundberg was intel on the viability of more insurance and risk management focused professionals attending technology conferences just like his. In short, technology developed for us will never be wholly useful to us if we aren't engaged in development and testing phases. All right, for our second set of interviews, I had the surprising honor of speaking with Scott Harrison, co-founder of the American Insurtech Council. AITC describes themselves as the independent voice for insurtechs in state, federal, and international forums seeking the development of regulatory and public policy that supports the growth and development of the insurtech industry. I was really surprised when he sat down on our couch and I figured out just what his expertise was. Then wait until you hear the excitement of Joseph Zaror, founder of iSolve Risk, and his silent co-founder who sat beside him, Nikaylee Whitaker. These two young professionals are looking to add some excitement into the risk and insurance industry, and I'm here for it. Last but certainly not least, I begged the University of Connecticut Director of Global and Experimental Education, Larissa Burke, to sit down with us so that I could understand just how important education is to technologists building tech for an industry they have little to no experience with. I'm really excited about the person that I have sitting down in front of me because I think this really matches the conversation that we're having about bridging communication and knowledge gaps between two different industries. For us, it's the insurance and technology industry. For the person sitting in front of me, it's the regulatory environment of the insurance industry and technology. Who do I have with me right now?
I'm Scott Harrison.
And who are you with?
I'm a co-founder of the American Insurtech Council. I'm also a lawyer and advisor to the insurance industry. I've been advising the insurance industry on a variety of regulatory risk, compliance risk, and operational risk for almost 30 years.
Amazing. Tell me a little bit about the mission of the American Insurtech Council.
Yeah, we formed the American Insurtech Council about 2.5 years ago because we realized that as insurance regulators were thinking about the impact of insurtech on the insurance industry and on consumers and what regulatory responsibilities they would have regarding AI, predictive analytics, machine learning, we realized that the people that were typically available to work with regulators in the industry or trade associations or other groups knew a lot about insurance but didn't know anything about the technology. Insurance departments at that time didn't have data scientists, in their department.
Right.
Many insurance companies didn't have data scientists, in their companies. And so having been involved in development of regulatory policy and regulatory modernization for a long time, I realized there was a significant knowledge gap. I'd also spent enough time with Insurtechs to understand that while they knew a lot about technology, they didn't know anything about insurance. They certainly didn't know anything about insurance regulation. So we formed the American Insurtech Council to help bridge that gap. We are an advocacy group. Our mission is to be an effective advocate for good public policy, and regulation around use of AI and other digital technology. But at the same time, we view ourselves as having a mission to educate both the general public, regulators, and the industry about, whether it's regulatory issues, technology issues, wherever we see a knowledge gap, we want to try to help, coach people up to understand a little bit better, what's coming.
You've said the word knowledge gap several times. This is my third year at an Insurtech conference, and that is one thing that has proliferated each year is the identification of a knowledge gap between the technologists and who they're building technology for. What are some of the challenges? And I think you kind of hit on it earlier as we were talking, and you didn't know I was going to invite you to sit down for the podcast. You said something about 7 years in the making, and I know it's been longer than that. What are we doing? Why have we not solved this knowledge gap yet? I mean, we know it's there.
Yeah, I think there are a few reasons. I think I'll give a lot of credit to state insurance regulators and the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. They identified very early on that this was going to be an issue, even though they didn't have the tools in their department, they didn't have the knowledge base themselves. They understood that this was
very wise.
They understood that this was coming. So I give them a lot of credit. And frankly, in many ways, the development of regulatory policy in this space is farther ahead than the development of policy in the banking space or other areas of financial services.
Yeah.
So I give the NAIC a lot of credit. But at the same time, the insurance industry is not an industry that's known for being at the tip of the spear on innovation.
No way. And you don't say.
And that's just the reality. And clearly there has been innovation in the insurance industry, and we can identify companies over the past 10 or 15 years that have done something that we would consider innovative.
We have a CRM and AMS now. We're not doing everything by paper and fax machine all the time. So there is some innovation.
But it took a global pandemic to do away with wet signatures.
Okay.
So part of it is, I think, the insurance industry, and I need to distinguish between the property casualty industry, which has been much quicker to embrace digital innovation than the life industry and probably the health industry.
Which is kind of confounding. I would have thought that life and health would have come first because that seems pretty simple.
I think the reason is rooted in the technology itself and sort of how improving the customer experience is a central feature in digital technology. Everything from our iPhones to, whatever. It's all about the customer experience. And so in P&C, developers identified some pretty clever opportunities to break into the insurance space to add value. Telematics would be a great example.
It is. Telematics is a good example. However, again, with telematics, it's been around for a decade or more at this point, and you can look around the showroom floor now, and there's still telematics that are screaming, please, more utilization and trust me.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I think the insurance industry, and I'll speak globally, their job is to conserve their assets and be very conservative in how they operate their business so that they are there to pay claims either next year or in 50 years. Mm-hmm. And so it's an industry that by definition is conservative.
Right.
And I just mean in terms of their approach. They don't take big risks. I have a client, a friend who we used to say, he said, you notice there's never been such a thing as a digital camera in the insurance industry. That's a really good point.
Okay.
Kodak it took companies to make a digital camera that put Kodak out of business. But there's not that drive for consumer, like for innovation and consumer experience in the insurance business. There hasn't been. That's starting to change.
Right.
So I think that's one aspect of it. The insurance industry, speaking broadly, is getting better. It's coming along. But I think one of the challenges, and this is where regulators are starting to catch up, insurance carriers are very reluctant to get too far down the road on something if they don't know what their regulators think about it.
Okay.
So until very recently, the NAIC had not made any bold statements about company use of AI.
Okay.
Now the NAIC has said, we think, and states are adopting this model bulletin on use of artificial intelligence that said, okay, we think companies ought to have a governance and AI risk management framework. You are responsible for the technology that you purchase or lease, whatever, from a vendor. So now there's the beginning of a regulatory framework that gives carriers the ability to understand, okay, how do we move forward? The big issue that the NAIC is starting to deal with this year, is the very complex issue of what to do about third-party vendors.
Okay.
One of the key elements or key principles in our regulatory scheme here in the U.S. is this notion of transparency. Regulators want to understand how companies are making decisions, whether it's respect to how they manage their assets, how they do their investments, how they underwrite, how they pay claims, and through examinations and other things, they've acquired the knowledge of how companies do that. Well, now when you have a third-party vendor that is providing technology that's in a black box, and they're providing an answer or information to a carrier, the carrier may not know where that information came from, what the algorithm is, how often, if at all, it's been tested for bias or accuracy or whatever. But companies are using this data for underwriting, pricing automobile insurance, homeowners insurance, life insurance. Regulators are starting to say, wait a minute, where's the transparency? And so the effort now is to start to develop some rules around achieving regulatory transparency. At the same time, this goes back to the earlier comment about the vendors, the third parties, the tech people in Insurtech who don't know very much about insurance or about regulation. Now suddenly a regulator or the company that they want to do business with is going to say, we need to see your algorithm. You need to open the black box or we can't do business with you. Or regulators may say, you know what, we don't have any choice but to require third-party vendors to be licensed.
Right.
Or require that third-party vendors file their models for approval in 50 states plus the District of Columbia.
So for you, regulation and technology, there's a huge knowledge gap. The reason why some technology is not capable of proliferating or evolving or being adopted is because they didn't consider the regulatory space and they don't know how to ask those questions.
That's right. And we're still, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do with the American Insurtech Council is to help facilitate those discussions and sometimes, frankly, those debates. And we're very clear, we're an advocacy group. We will have a point of view, but at the same time, my co-founders and I, we respect regulation. Some of us, in addition to me, worked as regulators. We understand the responsibility.
Sure.
We want to promote a space for good companies to do innovation. We want to keep the bad guys out. And we want to make sure that consumers are protected. And we want to make sure that there is room for continued innovation. So it's a process.
Right. Scott, thank you so much for sitting in the awkward space here at Insurtech Insights. It's been a pleasure. I know I've enjoyed the conversation, and it was one that I think we were desperately searching for.
Well, thank you. If anybody's interested in learning more about the American Insurtech Council, you can find us on the web, AmericanInsurtechCouncil.com. just Google us. You can find us. We'd love to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I had a conversation with these two gentlemen sitting in front of me right now about a couple of hours ago, and there was so much energy. So let's just jump right in. Who do I have with me today?
You have Joe Zaror, the founder and CEO of iSolve Risk.
Awesome. Who's your partner sitting next to you?
This is Nikhil Whitaker, president of iSolve Risk.
So let's jump straight into the conversation. iSolve Risk doesn't say a lot about the energy that you brought to the conversation earlier. Tell me about what you do in a non-sales pitchy kind of way.
Sure. Here's my business pitch now. So what iSolve Risk is, very simply, is a vehicle to create opportunities for others. And we're creating opportunities for others by solving the problem of talent in the insurance industry. And we plan on solving that problem of talent in the insurance industry by gamifying risk management.
Why do you feel like talent in the insurance industry is a problem?
So the industry suffers, in our opinion, from a perception problem. And you look at it as though it's not attractive to like younger talent. So what we're looking to do, and by gamifying risk management, we're looking ultimately to shift the perception of risk management in insurance from a cumbersome, tedious, mundane industry to an exciting, challenging, rewarding, stimulating experience. So we're gamifying risk management. We're taking the fundamental backbone of the insurance industry and implementing or synthesizing gamification qualities with fundamental risk management principles. Think of, for example, what Robinhood did to the stock market or what Duolingo did to learning a language. iSolve Risk is doing to risk management what those companies did to their respective fields. So we're implementing gamification, and then using that technology, that gamified technology, we want to host these events called gauntlets, which is a mixture of professional networking meets programming hackathon. So picture a high-end, nice venue, right? Happy hour, hors d'oeuvres are served, refreshments, sociable, there's good music, everyone's networking and talking and having a great time. Half an hour into the event, random teams will be formed from the attendees. And then those teams now have 30 to 45 minutes roughly to complete as many risk management and insurance challenges as possible. At the end of the time, top performers will be awarded a prize and will be eligible for a round 2 gauntlet, which is the same gamified challenge environment, only this time it's hosted at an employer site for companies actively hiring.
Okay, so I've got a couple of ideas in my head going on right now. And one of them, I'm just going to go ahead and call it out, is we do insurance education at the high school and college level. And that's all fun because high school and college levels, you get to have fun, you get to learn new things. There's lots of challenges to keep them engaged because we want to keep the students, right? So I'm thinking about gamification of risk management education. But then what happens when we grow up and there's no more gamification left?
So that's very interesting that you touch on that note, because iSolve Risk is designed in such a way for that risk management skill, that gamification skill, to be carried on with you after your post-career, your post-academic career. So the idea is, if we can introduce risk management as a fun, exciting, challenging game at the high school level, right? By the time they finish high school and they want to go to college to, pursue a career, they're like, oh, I want to keep playing the game. So they'll pursue a career in risk management because in their minds, they're still playing the game of risk management. By the time they graduate college and they're looking to pick a career, they have already been exposed to risk management as an exciting, challenging, stimulating experience for now 8 years. So when it comes time to pick a career, that same gamified risk management will come into mind. So, oh, I want to continue playing the game. So they'll go pick a career in the insurance industry. And what we're looking to do at iSolve Risk is go in not just from talent recruiting, but training and onboarding. So now we can synthesize gamification into training and onboarding, and then have the new associates work through these legacy carriers, these legacy brokers, and actually have recognition and awards and accolades being awarded to them as they progress through the beginning of their career in insurance.
What happens if they're expecting that gamification and they know it's possible, but then it's not there? Are they going to run? Are they going to go find something else to do?
So the whole point about gamification, and what we're trying to do at iSolve Risk with gamification as it pertains to risk management, is to create an experience. So it's not just technologically rooted in technology, it's rooted in the experience, right? The idea was we're creating these events, these gauntlets, where now you can interact with, meet all sorts of new people from all different walks of life at all different points within their career. And they have the opportunity or an environment where now you are forced to network with these folks, because you're forced to come together and work together as a team.
So we're
to
building
solve
a
these
new
problems.
generation of insurance and risk management professionals through gamification.
So recruiting new age, but also tying in the seasoned folks, right, who've been doing it for 25, 30, 35 years. All of that knowledge can now be retained, because now these folks can now create the challenges to train the up and comers in the industry. So now that experience, that knowledge isn't lost anymore, and it has a way for it to be retained and then cycled through.
I like it. That's a huge piece that's missing, and something that I've been trying to talk more about is the knowledge transfer. When these legacy professionals decide to retire, an industry that's built on historical data
In relationships.
they're not going to be there. And if we don't get the emerging professionals in quick enough to start collecting that data, it's just going to go away. So being able to add it into a process like what you're talking about and proliferate the knowledge transfer, the historical information, the relationships, the sales solutions and all of that through a gamification process is absolutely fun. I've loved this conversation. So quick question, have you started the gamification yet? Have you had a gauntlet?
No, not yet. We're still building. However, I'm very happy to report that we're talking to multiple brokers, multiple organizations such as the Alliance, RIMS, NAIA, to hosting and collaborating and hosting gauntlets at their events, right? And then from there, we also have a number of schools within the New York City area who's willing to do pilot gauntlets for their college classrooms as well. So the attention is there, the reception is there, the interest is there. Now it's up to iSolve Risk to execute.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down in the awkward space at Insurtech Insights USA 2024. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much.
I am very happy with who I have sitting in front of me right now. So let's jump into an introduction. Who do I have with me right now?
Yep. So my name is Larissa Burke, and I am the Director of Global and Experiential Education for the University of Connecticut's School of Business.
Right. UConn.
I
had the pleasure of being connected with UConn through the president of Insurtech Insights, Megan Kaczynski.
Yes.
She connected us. We wanted to work really well with your students on an introductory course. It didn't quite work out, but that's okay. I found out that you guys have booth space here at Insurtech Insights, which is very unique. Nobody else around us is anything other than an Insurtech startup or pitching tech. So I thought, you know what? I really need to sit down with UConn, because we've had a lot of conversations about this educational piece between insurance technology and the insurance industry. And there's an educational component that technologists are missing. So I really want to understand what kind of engagement, or maybe what were the hopes of UConn coming and setting up booth space here at Insurtech Insights?
Yes. So we have a Master's of Financial Technology. I do experiential education for that program, as well as our Master's in Financial and Enterprise Risk Management program and our Business Analytics program. And they're incredibly entrepreneurial minded and very practical. So Megan Kaczynski is actually on the FinTech board of advisors for our program. And one of the things we wanted to do is really make sure that curriculum is practical and that our students are actually learning what's being used in the industry. So we go to these conferences for many different purposes, one of which is connecting with businesses and seeing what their needs are and bringing our students here. So we actually had like 30 students here yesterday, and they're in business analytics, they're in fintech, but a lot of them are thinking PayPal or Amazon or Google. And we want them to see insurance and Insurtech as a top choice as well, especially as we're based in Connecticut, right? So they come here and they finally get to see, okay, there's an Insurtech, there's an insurance company, and they're using AI. They didn't know that, right? So their eyes really get wide, and they're like, I was learning about that technology in class, and now I'm seeing it's being deployed in this industry. It doesn't seem as boring, because I think insurance has that reputation, right? So we're trying to make it seem sexy.
I didn't mean that's right. Really... I mean, that's not how anybody sees our industry at all. So what kind of engagement are you guys getting at the booth? Like, here we have a bunch of technologists. Do they think at first, that they know everything about what they're doing and don't realize that they're missing a piece of education. Are they biting?
They are biting. I would say probably one of the coolest things that's come out of this is actually one of my students went to a booth and they do, I think it's like machine learning. And now we're doing a hackathon with them.
Okay.
So our students are going to go on there, do use cases, test out the material. They'll also be able to see how they rank worldwide on their platform. It's like this is a startup, and then we're going to do a hackathon. So we're doing.
I've heard a lot of hackathon ideas.
Yes.
While I've been here, some hackathons, some gauntlets, but a lot of hackathon ideas, which is really interesting, especially for the younger crowd.
Yep.
But is the older crowd interested in hackathons?
The companies are. I will say
Why are the companies interested in hackathons?
I think in this instance, it's going to help them build out their platform as well.
Okay.
Right? So that makes sense for them. I think they're also biting when we talk about capstone projects, because that's, labor from students with a faculty advisor. So they're interested in that as well. I don't know. It's been good conversations, and I think a lot of people are just interested in engaging with education more so than I was expecting.
Yes. I think,
right? There's like an altruism to it.
They're coming around, I think, is the thing. They thought that they could enter the space just with their technology information without really understanding the underlying logistics of the space. And now they're realizing, oh, we're missing a part. Yep. So I have another question as you were talking, and I was thinking, okay, so the students are the one that are learning from UConn, all the educational components. They're going to either the companies or whomever this is that's proposing the hackathon idea. Do they have enough experiential knowledge, not textbook knowledge, but experiential knowledge to really make sure that what they're trying to improve actually meets the needs of those who are going to be working with it every day?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I'm really obsessed with. I have to be. That's my role. We bring in speakers. We have a lot of seminar courses as well, and that's what they talk about. So you've been learning about this in the classroom. How are we actually using it? What are our business problems? And I think that, and it might be something that you were speaking to, is you need to know technology, right? But you also have to understand business and business needs,
right?
Or the solutions you're going to be presenting won't make any sense.
Yeah. Would it make sense to send these students into the hackathon with an industry expert mentor?
Absolutely, it would.
Yeah.
That would be phenomenal.
Right?
We have like an insurance fundamentals course, and we're looking to build upon that. And that is essentially just getting them to understand this industry. And that's taught by executives as well that are like, here's what we do. This is the business. These are our business models. So that they can join their internships post that course with a better understanding. Because, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So, all right, we've talked about the education. Let's just get casual for a second. What's drawing people to your booth? This guy down here has Lego men.
Yep.
What's drawing them to the UConn booth?
We have basketball stress balls. And if you know anything about UConn, you know basketball, actually. I can give that to you.
Nice.
That's probably really the main thing. And we can travel
globally. Do you have basketball hoops over there that they can shoot them into?
That is a genius idea. We have to do that.
I mean, all you had to do was go down to the store and get a little tight, basketball hoop. No big deal.
We have to do that. Or even a trash can at this point, right? Just have a competition
grab a trash
going.
Can.
Yeah.
And now we've got trash ball.
Yeah.
I love it.
New term.
Thank you so much for sitting in the awkward space at Insurtech Insights. I really do appreciate you sitting down and talking about education and why technologists need it.
You made this easy. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
That's it for our on-the-floor interviews from the 2024 Insurtech Insights Conference in the Big Apple. As always, New York City delivers a unique environment every time. This was our second year at the conference, and I have to say that we had an absolute blast, and it was bigger and even better than before. Check out our previous episode, which was recorded live on stage from the event, and we have a few more pieces of content coming out, including videos and another podcast. So keep an eye out for that, and be sure that you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts to get all the latest episodes from Awkward Insurance. Toodles, everybody!